All right, it looks like we're live. Hey everyone! I see all of you guys in the chat here. Thank you so much for joining and kind of sitting in here ahead of time. It's always so much fun kind of waiting for the live to happen, but then seeing all of these amazing names scrolling by of this wonderful community. I see lots of friends. Hey, Jennifer McGuire. I saw Laura Graff in here too, so thank you everyone so much for the support. I really do appreciate it. And then I see lots of amazing crafters in here too. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful day today, crafting and yesterday. And whether you're kind of crafting along with them or you're eating some snacks or doing work and watching along with, which is what I tended to be doing today, I hope you guys have been having an absolute blast. And just a reminder that you can kind of take this at whatever pace you want to. So we've got 4 cards today and lots of different techniques, and it might be a little bit kind of faster pace. I'm going to try to go as slow as possible. But if you find yourself kind of running behind, don't get stressed. You can always go back and rewatch any parts of the class. And then also, I wanted to make sure you guys know too, this book is going to come really in handy, especially if you're crafting alone later on. Because we're going to kind of modify things, not change the techniques, but we're going to switch up the order of what you do things a little bit in today's class, just because the paste has a little bit of a dry time. So we're gonna kind of jump back and forth. But if you're doing this on your own and you have all the time in the world, you can also look at this book and kind of do 1 card at a time and really focus on each step to really learn the process too. So with that out of the way, I wanted to just let you guys know, do this at whatever pace you want and kind of relax through it. Let's get into it. I think this is going to be tons of fun. Now, Ranger is in the chat. Say hi to Patty. She is wonderful, and she is going to answer kind of product questions. If I don't see them as they go by, she's going to kind of answer anything that could be quickly answered in the chat. And then if there's any larger questions too as we go along, don't worry, I will still be kind of looking at the chat, reading all of your guys' questions, and answering any of the questions that you have as well. But there's both of us. So if you get an answer in the chat from Ranger, that's awesome as well. All right, looks like we can get started. Someone said, can you adjust the volume just a tad? Do you want it down or up a little bit higher? Is it cracking out a little bit? Let me go down just a little bit. I don't want to be too loud. Sorry, sometimes I like yell a little bit and the mic is at a certain volume. So I want to make sure that it's good for you and not cracking because I can't hear it myself. All right, let me know in the chat. So let's turn on my desk here. Now there's 3 cards in here and there's also a bonus card. And I decided today we're going to create the bonus card as well. So, oh, everyone's saying up. Okay, I'll go up a little bit. Awesome. And is it really quiet? Definitely try putting your volume up as well, but is it super quiet? Okay. So there are 4 different cards inside of here, and I've put in the notes just kind of some little tips and pointers, mainly just what we're going to cut the card down to after I like it. So use the notes if you want to. That section is going to be really awesome to work with as well. All right, let me turn the volume up. But yeah, turn the volume up on your computer too, and that way you will go a little bit louder because I don't want the audio to kind of peak over here because if I put it up higher, it's going to just kind of mess up there. So I'm going to have this to the side of me the whole time while I'm working so that you can kind of read some of the instructions as we go as well. So we're starting off with this card, and like I said, we're going to jump around a little bit, but this one is so much fun. It has this kind of snowflake background, and then it's got that cute little penguin and sentiment right in the center there. And this one uses a little bit of the ink and pastes. Awesome. Everyone's saying the sound sounds good. So yeah, if you're having troubles or it's a little bit quiet for you, definitely turn the volume up on your end. Okay. So for this, I'm going to go in using a sticky mat. You don't need to use a sticky mat here. You can always just tape your cardstock down to your surface, but I just like this because it saves a little bit of time as I'm crafting. But once again, no need for a sticky mat, but it is helpful to kind of hold your cardstock down as you're doing the stenciling. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the stencil that was inside of this kit. This stencil is so much fun. It's got these kind of spiral looking stars to them. And when you put these stencils together, it creates this great snowflake pattern. What I think is awesome about this is like, if you do it in spring colors too, it could be those kind of things that turn in the wind as well. So really awesome stencil. It's just kind of great geometric design. I'm going to start off with the first layer of the stencil. And in the bottom corner, you're going to see etched markings. It says spiral star 1 and spiral star 2. okay? And we're going to use Spiral Star 1 for the first layer here. Oh, and everyone's asking what size cardstock this is. I think there was 2 sheets of cardstock included in your kit for card bases, and there was also 2 sheets for card panels. So this is just an A2 size card panel. It's not the folded card, just a card panel, all right? And we're just going to stick that down to our sticky mat here. And then I'm going to take my stencil and I'm going to stick it down. Now, if you're using a sticky mat, you're going to want to flip your stencil the opposite way, okay? There's kind of a matte side and there's a glossy side. Flip it so that the glossy side of your stencil is facing towards the sticky mat. If you're using tape, it doesn't really matter, but if you're using a sticky mat, you want to stick the glossy side down towards the stencil. The matte side you want facing upwards. Yep, there's a little bit of a coating on the back of this matte side, so if you put the matte side down, it's going to peel off the coating. It's no big deal really, but it's just going to look a little bit weird on your stencil. So just want to make sure to avoid that. So do the glossy side facing down, but if you're using tape, totally avoid that and just tape your stencil down. But I wanted to let you know, in case if anyone's using a sticky mat at home by themselves too, you want to use the glossy side facing downward, okay? Awesome. So then let's go in and do our ink blending. Now for ink blending, you can use a blending brush or you can go in with a blending sponge as well. Either one is going to work fine. For this, I'm going to use my blending brush because all these little bristles are going to be better for getting into these really pointed areas down in the stencil. Okay, so it's going to give you the most kind of coverage and all of that awesome detail that's inside of the stencil, but either one is going to work just fine. I just find that with pointed designs, you're going to get more detail with a brush. Awesome. So then we're going to go in with our Crown Me ink pad, but you can use any kind of purple ink. This is the purple color that I'm using from my Simon Hurley line. And I'm going to go in and blend this right down. And just super easily, especially with the sticky mat. It sticks down so nicely so you don't even have to hold it down. And you'll get a really great blend on the surface of colors. I know, it's so much fun. I actually love kind of finishing off the night on Friday night. It's always such a wonderful time. It means that if I go over slightly, I'm not running into anyone else's classes, which is nice, but also it's a good time to kind of wind down and just enjoy crafting together and just learn a bunch of techniques. So if you're not crafting with me today and you're just watching, it's still a really fun time. But I love this time slot. Thank you, Catherine, for, she always gives me this Friday time slot, which I love. I think it's awesome. Okay, so once that's all blended out, I'm going to lift the stencil off of the mat. Yes, I love this purple Crown Me color. Isn't it just gorgeous? It is so beautiful and it creates such a wonderful blend of color down onto the surface. So there we have our first layer of ink down. I think that looks beautiful. Yeah, exactly. We get bonus minutes, right? Okay, so now I'm going to clean this off. Now if you're cleaning any sort of sticky mat, I just like to spray it down with some water. And I'm going to go in with a little bit of paper towel and just wipe it off, or a lint-free cloth. And then once that water evaporates, that'll be nice and sticky again. All right. Yes, Dawn says, almost time for a glass of wine. I like your thinking there. I like that. All right. So once we're done with that first layer, we're going to go in with the second stencil. This one should say Spiral Stars number 2. Now, whichever way that you used your stencil inside of the first layer, you're going to want to do the same thing this way. So because I flipped it over the first time, I'm going to flip it over again to line it up. I guess you could use it this way too, since the design, oh no, you couldn't. Yeah, no, because it lines up like that. So if you flipped it over in the first place, flip it again. If you didn't, keep it the same way that you had it, okay? And we're going to go in using a little bit of mint tape to hold it down this time. Now the reason why I switched out of that sticky mat is because here we're going to go in using a little bit of Astro paste. And when it comes to Astro paste, there's a lot of glitter inside of there, and you don't want to use a sticky mat with your glitter because the sticky mat is going to stick all of that glitter down, okay? So you don't want to use any sort of glitter on there. You can use lunar paste on there, but I would avoid any glittery paste with actual particles of glitter in it. And you're just going to go in here and line this right up. And to know that it's aligned, all of the areas, all the points will go in between the other ones and you won't see any of those purple points, okay? So that's how you know you got the stencil lined up correctly. You can also look at that text. The text is really helpful for lining things up because if you have the text in the same orientation as the first time that you did it, so the first time I flipped it and it was on the left bottom corner, that's how you know it's going to be lined up as well. So that's why we do those etchings there. And then I'm going to grab a little bit more mint tape Once it's all lined up here, that looks good. And I'm just going to tape it down. Now when it comes to taping down my project with mint tape, whenever I use Astro paste, I like to add a little bit of tape all around the stencil to hold the stencil down, make sure it's not going to shift or lift as we do it. And I like to tape off the sides too, just because it prevents any of that Astro paste getting underneath that stencil and underneath the card too. So that is why it looks like I'm using a lot of tape. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I like to just kind of make sure that the edges of my card are kind of protected as well. Awesome. So now let's go in using a little bit of the Astro paste. Here we're going to use a little bit of the Clear Skies Astro paste. I think this blue color is going to be gorgeous with that purple color. And just a reminder, if this is your first time working with the Astro paste looks a little bit cloudy inside of the jar when you first apply it, but once the paste dries, it goes completely clear and you really see that amazing color. So it's not going to look like this at first, so don't be alarmed, but once it dries, you'll get a ton of sparkle on there. Exactly. No shift, no lift. Am I right? Mint tape is really helpful. You need lots of it. I agree. Awesome. Okay, so let's go in here, lift that off, and then I'll go in with the Astro paste. Now, you can use a palette knife. Any sort of palette knife will do here. You just want to take your texture paste and apply it right to the top of your stencil here. I'm going to apply quite a bit because you can always put any of the excess back into the jar, okay? If you're using just a regular palette knife and you don't have a scraper tool, which is what I'm going to use next, you can start spreading your paste all the way throughout your stencil, okay? So just start spreading it if you don't have a scraper tool. But if you do have a tool like this, which if you have my paste tool set, it comes with 2 scrapers and a palette knife. This is going to be really great for swiping that paste all the way down your surface here and getting great coverage across the background. And what I love about this too is I said you can use as much as you want because then you can take any of the excess and put it right back into the jar. But I find that using more is helpful because then you could really easily scrape it. You're not struggling. One tip with this scraper tool is if you don't apply enough paste, you tend to kind of scrape and scrape and scrape and press a little too hard, and that can sometimes make any paste go underneath your stencil. You want to do it with a light pressure as you're applying the paste down. That will make sure you're not pressing the paste underneath. That's why I apply quite a bit so that it's really easy to glide it across. The difference between Astro and Lunar paste, let me show you quickly. I don't want to get too off track, but I'll just show you my swatch sheets. This is Lunar paste, this is Astro paste. Astro paste has a bunch of sparkle and glitter in it, whereas Lunar paste has mica. So Lunar paste is metallic and Astro paste has glitter in it. Awesome. They both are really great colored pastes though. I absolutely love them for creating backgrounds like this. Okay, so now let's go in, clean off our tools in between. You want to make sure to clean anything off before it dries. So I'll just go in here and clean those off. And then I want to close my Astro paste too. You don't want to leave it open as you're working because you don't want it to dry out. All right, then let's lift this off the surface and check that out. Such a beautiful look, and you get such a pointed design with that Astro paste. Even though it has all that glitter, you still get into all the amazing details because the glitter is super fine. Check that out. It looks amazing. Give me all of it, right? Yeah, the swatch sheets are super helpful. I kind of recommend swatching your products when you get them in, especially with these Astro pastes, because in the jar it looks completely different. But if you want to know what the color is going to look like once you put it down, swatch sheets can be super helpful for all of that. So let's set this off to the side now. We're going to talk a little bit about cleaning. Yeah, wowza, right? But once this dries, it's going to look even cooler. So we're going to set this off to the side. Set your project off to the side where you're not going to ruin it. I've done that one too many times where you just like kind of stick your elbow right into your project. So put it somewhere where you're not going to touch it or mess it up. And now let's get to cleaning our stencil off. So when it comes to cleaning your stencil, I'm going to lift off this tape, and that's super helpful because it caught any of the excess glitter from going underneath our card. And one thing that we talked about briefly in the meet and greet, which I actually didn't include in the instructions because I didn't know about it really at the time. I never used to do this, but I just started recently because a few recommended it. And I just kind of have a baking sheet. I don't use this for food ever, but you can use any sort of plastic bin or baking sheet or any little tub like this. And I just submerge it and then kind of start wiping with my fingers here. Now, with this stencil, it's not super necessary to do this because the stencil isn't really super intricate, so it tends to clean off really easy no matter what you do with it, whether you want to just kind of spray it off and wipe it off with paper towel. But I like to just kind of submerge it because it really gets rid of all that glitter and just keeps it kind of contained in that water, and then you're ready to keep moving on with the stencil. Now, if you're working, you can also just set this in the stencil and leave it for a couple hours, and it's not going to dry either. So that's really awesome too. So that's one of my favorite ways to clean it. Someone had recommended that during the meet and greet, and I said, yeah, you can have that water if you want to. Today we're going to be using the stencil a ton, so it's not like you can just leave the stencil sitting in the water for a long time, because we're going to keep pulling it out and using it all the time. But I wanted to recommend that if you are intrigued by cleaning, or you really don't like getting glitter everywhere, that's one way to clean it without getting glitter anywhere, because the glitter tends to kind of just stay submerged under the water. All right. So we'll just dry this off because we're going to use it again, but I wanted to show you that. You can kind of just swipe it underneath the water and super clean. All right. So let's move on to the next card. I also want to just quickly wipe this one off that had the purple ink on it, and we're going to use that for the next card too. And Lord knows I would forget to wipe that off if I didn't do it right now, and we would have a purple mess on the next card, which we don't want to do. So wipe off your stencils, make sure everything's clean before we move on to this next step. And we're going to move into a completely different card now while we wait for that one to dry. So we're going to make all the backgrounds with paste on it first. We're going to wait for them to dry while we do other things a little bit later as well. So that's why I said, like, we're straying away a little bit from the instructions, but it'll all make sense in the end. All right. So let's turn back down to our work surface. For this next card, I'm going to pull in another sheet of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cardstock here. And let's see, any questions? Are we doing good, everyone? Doing good on how fast we're going? So I would not recommend using the glitter paste with any sticky mats, no. Your 5-year-old son is just yelling about how awesome Astro paste is. Well, Jennifer, that is amazing. I love the marketing at a young age. I really appreciate that. All right, so let's go in with a little bit of Guppy. I'm going to go in this time with a domed foam blending tool, but again, if you want to use a blending brush in this instance, you totally can, all right? Either way is going to be perfect, and I'm going to go in here and just start blending out at the bottom of my backdrop. Now, this is a new foam, so it's taking to the ink a little bit different. You gotta kind of get it saturated with ink before you start blending. But I'm starting off with a light orange color right at the bottom here, and I'm gonna create kind of a sunset blend. So this is what we want it to look like at the end, just as a reference point. We're going to start our blending right at the bottom here. Saturate that down with that beautiful orange color. I think that's probably, let's go a little bit higher on this side. That's probably enough ink. That'll be good. And then we'll move into our pink. So we'll go in using a little bit of Rosy Cheeks. Okay. Right now, we're just using ink. No glitter yet on this one. This is just ink blending right now. All right, and we'll go in with our blending tools, and we're going to blend this together. Now, with this pink color, you're gonna wanna kind of blend it down into the orange. And the awesome part about my Simon Hurley Create inks, I know lots of dye inks will do this as well though, they blend beautifully, okay? There's barely any effort that goes into blending them. Even if there's a harsh mark at the beginning, it tends to kind of smooth out after a little bit of time or a little bit of working with blending, and you get just such a smooth and dreamy color. And in between there, these inks are translucent, so you're gonna get a different color. Here you got a much darker orange, which is so stunning. Then we're going to move on up a little bit further. We're gonna go in using a little bit of Crown Me ink, which is this gorgeous purple color that we used earlier. I absolutely love this color. It's one of my favorites. And I'll blend that right down into the pink ink. And we'll just overlap it a little bit, again, to get a brand new color in between those. Thanks, everyone. Everyone likes the blending. Yeah, I love this color combination, too. It's kind of like just a really great nighttime sky. I always like to do kind of oranges, pinks, leading into purples, and then blue. And it's just a beautiful blend. And then if you want to help it blend even more, you can always go back in with the last color. So here I'm gonna go in with Rosy Cheeks if you feel like you want to kind of overlap it a little bit more and help it blend out just a little bit. So if you notice that your blend has kind of a harsh mark or a line in it, definitely re-overlap it with ink and it will be super concentrated and gorgeous. Okay. Then we're going to go in using a little bit of No Diving ink, which is this great mid-tone blue color, one of my favorites from my line. And we're going to go in and ink blend this right at the top. And again, overlap it with that purple color, and it's going to create another beautiful blend in between. Gorgeous. I love this color combination. It's so fun to create this nighttime sky with this colors. Okay. And remember, with my Simon Hurley Create inks, if you're using them, they are a felt-based pad. So if you're like tapping like this, you might not get a lot of color down. But if you want more ink, go in and push lots of pressure down, because pressure is going to make that ink come out more, and go back and forth like this. That's how I recommend applying the ink to your sponge tool rather than just lightly tapping. You're not going to get much by this, but the pressure is what's going to release that ink out of here. So if you're not getting super concentrated colors, that's probably why. Try applying a little bit more pressure and you might get a more concentrated color, which is what you want for this card. And check that out. So gorgeous. Irene said she's a fellow purple fan. You knew there was a reason why you liked me. Well, purple is a great color, and I love that Crown Me purple. It's so beautiful because it's kind of a cool tone, and it's just a really unique purple. I haven't really seen it before. Awesome, so I'm gonna go in and just clean my work surface. I'm working on a craft sheet here, and I'm just going to wipe the ink right off the surface. My Simon Hurley inks don't stain, and they clean off super easily. So I can just go in and wipe that off. And now we're gonna do a little bit more paste techniques. So the colors, if you're asking, are Guppy, Rosy Cheeks, Crown Me, and No Diving. And technically you could skip Crown Me in between there because the pink and the blue are gonna create a purple, but I like to add a little purple in there because, well, I'm a purple lover, as you guys know, and I like that purple color. So I wanted to add that in there, but it will create purple when you overlap it as well. Awesome. Okay, now let's move on to doing the paste technique on this card. So for this, I'm gonna go in, let's see, which stencil do I wanna use? I'm gonna use the Spiral Stars 1 stencil. I'm going to first tape this card down to hold it in place. And I like to just kind of loop a little piece of mint tape right onto the back and place it right down onto my craft sheet. Then I'm gonna go in, again, I'll just look at that little etching at the bottom so I know it's in the bottom right corner. So that's how it's going to align with the next stencil. Again, don't use any sticky mat on this step because we are using the glitter paste again. So you don't want the glitter to go on any sticky mat. Is there a difference between using the blending brush and a blending tool? So I would say there is room for both on the market. I really love both for different applications. When I'm using a blending tool, you'll notice I use that for really trying to get super solid color. The blending tool gives you a really great solid color very quickly. And it also gives you a little bit less concentrated color if you want to, using a lighter pressure. But its specialty for me is really in getting that solid blend. With blending brushes, I really use those if I'm using like a pointy or really detailed stencil that I want to blend on. I also like them for kind of blending out a smoother, softer background. But with blending brushes, you can also use them to layer it up a couple times, and then you'll get a dark look too. So it really just depends. It's kind of personal preference. Some people find that with blending brushes, they get a better result because sometimes they have a harder time controlling the ink blending tool. So it's really all up to personal preference. So maybe like before you invest in a couple, maybe get like one of each and kind of test them out and see which ones you like. All right. And then I'm going to go in and tape all this down. Again, I'm taping down the edges as well, just so that it's nice and held down in place. All right, then we're gonna go in using a little bit of the Frostbite Astro paste. Now, the difference between the Frostbite Astro paste and the rest of the Astro paste is that Frostbite is completely clear. So this is what it looks like on that black cardstock. Completely clear, and this one also has larger chunks of glitter in it as well as smaller chunks of glitter. And we did that because we wanted it to look like a crystallized, almost snow type look. So it's really cool, but it is completely clear once it's dry. So when you put it over a background like this, it's really cool and unique because it's going to pick up the colors of the inks underneath it, and you'll still be able to see all of the ink blending that you have going on there. So we're going to apply this the exact same way that we did the other one. Gonna go into here and grab a little bit of this frostbite paste. Now I already used these for my samples, so I might have to dig into my second jars here. Because I think I made the samples twice. So I used quite a bit of this paste already, but a little bit goes a pretty long way. And then I'm going to go in once I've spread it up at the top, and I'm going to spread it down using my scraper tool from that paste tool set. And I'm just going to scrape that generously down. Now with this one especially, you don't want to scrape too hard because of those larger chunks that are in there. It will remove some of those if you scrape a little bit too hard. So just smooth it across your background nicely, and don't work it too much, because if you work it too much, it'll start kind of picking up the color that was on there and kind of tint the paste. If it looks a little bit tinted, you won't be able to put it back in the jar. So I wouldn't work it too much, just 1 or 2 swipes, and then you should be good to put it right back into the jar. Laura Graff says, Frostbite is one of my faves, and the gold and the red. Okay, all of them are my favorites. I agree. It's hard to choose. It's hard to choose a favorite. But I think these are going to be like so great for holiday makes. I like the colors that you said there, the red, green, and gold, and this frostbite are going to be just so cool for making your holiday cards. And it doesn't need to be like a whole thing. Like on all these cards, it's really just a little accent to the card. And I really like that. It doesn't need to always take over. Like glitter doesn't need to be the star of the show, but it makes for a really good little accent. Okay. So once we're done with this, it looks like kind of a hot mess right now because that Astro paste has a white base in it, okay? So whenever you cover anything like this with the Frostbite Astro paste, because that's the only clear one, it's going to look really white on the surface. But once it dries, again, that base is going to turn clear and it's going to show you all of the amazing color that's underneath it. So don't be scared, don't be worried about it. Although it would be cool if this was white because it would look like little snowflakes. I love that this looks like kind of a frosted, kind of glass or snow kind of look. It's really cool. So that's what we want. We'll set this up to the side and let it dry. And I am going to set this off. Let's see, where should I put it? Let's put it right in front of me. I'm like finding a different place for each one of my backgrounds to make sure that I don't run into it and like set stuff on top of it, because I am notoriously known for doing that. And then I'm gonna go in, again, peel off that tape. And we've gotta be good about cleaning our supplies. So I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to, once again, actually this time I'll just show you another way to clean this really easily, especially if you're about to use it again. All you need to do is just go in with a paper towel. I kind of like scoop the excess paste off with that paper towel there, fold it into it, and then it's easy to wipe it off. Again, this stencil isn't very detailed, like there's not anything that's gonna snag on it, so it's easy to clean it off like that. All right, so that is nice and clean, and we're ready to move on to our next card. They do look like poinsettias. Yeah, I did think about that when I designed these. They would be really great for poinsettias if you do them in red, and then you could also take little pieces and mask them, and some of these could be little green leaves as well. So like if you do a couple little green leaves across in between the poinsettias, I think that would be really cool. You might see that in a Christmas card in the future for sure from me. Really fun. Okay, let's look back at our notes here to see what we're doing next. Okay, so next we're going to go in and we're going to do the bonus card. So let me move this off to the side. Where shall I set this card? For this one, we're going to do this technique right here. And now, this one, I'm gonna be completely honest. You might not get this perfect the first time, but that's what today is always about, okay? You're going to practice this and test it out and see, you know, it might take several times for you to get it perfect, because sometimes it does for me as well. But I'm gonna show you this technique so you can at least learn it, and then you might have to do it a couple of times afterwards in order to really get the hang of it. Or it might work on your first try. It really just depends on how the stencil wants to work out for you. Question, do you need a second layer for that card? A second layer? Yes, you do need a second layer, but that's gonna come after this paste is dry. You can't put it on right now because that paste is really wet. Okay, so for this card, we're going to start off with our stencil again. So let's go in here with the Spiral Star 1 stencil. And I'm going to go in using our No Diving ink pad. And I'm just going to go right onto the stencil here. And I'm just going to kind of ink up my stencil, almost like you would a stamp, right? And it doesn't need to be the whole thing. We're really only doing the center here on our A2 size card. Now to add the ink down, I press my finger down in the center of this ink pad to make sure that we're getting lots of ink down there. And you don't want to delicately press because that's not going to get you much ink on the surface. You want to really firmly press. I like to do a little kind of a little shimmy back and forth like this, and that's going to give you the best coverage of ink on top of there. And there, your stencil is fully covered with ink how we need it to be for this technique. You want lots of ink on there. All right. And then we're going to go in here and just clean this up. Wipe that off. And then we'll go in. I'm going to just set this on a little rag like this because we're going to get pretty wet here with this technique. And I'm going to go in and just mist this down all over. You want lots of water on this to the point where you can see that ink running all through that stencil, okay? That's how much water you want to add onto the surface. All right? You want that to be moving and mixing and blending. Now here I'm just doing it with one color, but you could do several colors, and in this case, when you do those several colors, they're going to kind of mix and blend when you spray it together like this. All right, then I'm going in with my cardstock. This is another sheet of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to just take my stencil, line it up where we want it, and stamp it down. All right, now once it's stamped down, you're gonna go in with a paper towel. This is a very important part of this. Paper towel right on top, and you're going to give it some pressure, okay? All the way through. It's important that you use a paper towel or a cloth and give it some pressure. And it's totally okay to give it some time underneath there to let it kind of sink into the cardstock and let all of that water go right into the cardstock. Okay. Someone said shiny or matte side of the stencil. I used the shiny side of the stencil. I found that it doesn't really matter which side you use, but I did use the shiny side. If you're having trouble with one side, maybe try flipping it. And once I let that sit on the surface, the water really sunk in there. You don't want to lift it off before the water kind of sinks in, otherwise you'll have a puddle on one side wherever you lifted it off. But it's really cool. It gives kind of a watercolor effect. If you see, I don't know if the camera's really picking it up, but you get kind of like a splotchy kind of watercolor look. On this first example, like some of it kind of skipped out in areas, which I think looks really cool. It's not perfect, which is what I love about this, right? You get kind of a cool painted watercolor technique with your stencil design, which I think is awesome. How fun is that? A really great technique. And now if you didn't get it perfect the first time, don't you worry. Like I said, you can always try that several times and keep testing it out. That's going to be there for you. This tutorial is always going to be there for you. So if you want to refer back to it, sometimes you might not add enough water. Sometimes you add a little too much water. I think maybe on today's example, I might have added just a slight bit too much water, but you're gonna get a different technique every single time, depending on how much water you add and how it kind of stamps on there. All right. So I'm gonna go in here with just my heat tool. This is the Ranger heated tool, and I'm just going to gently heat this because it is completely full of water and saturated now. And we'll just go in and heat set this. Really quite easy to do, and this heat tool gets nice and hot, so it really gets rid of all the water in that cardstock quite easily. This isn't watercolor cardstock. This is my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock. You could use watercolor cardstock as well, and that's going to work perfectly for you too. The thing I like about this cardstock is because it's not watercolor cardstock, it actually seeps in a little bit more, so you don't have to wait as long for the ink to sink in. But different cardstocks are gonna give you different results each time. So again, if maybe you're not getting it the first couple times with your cardstock, maybe try a different kind of cardstock, maybe try watercolor cardstock. But really I found that no matter what cardstock that I used, it's really about how much water you add with how the ink is going to look once you apply it down. All right, so I'm going to go in here And let's keep it up like this. And I'm going to go in and just add some tape down. And I'll tape it, I'm gonna tape it in the corners just to make sure that it's nice and held down here, because we're actually gonna end up trimming this background down on either side. So that's where I'm going to add the tape to hold it down, because it got a little bit warped, and I think a little bit of tape on the back isn't going to keep it down nicely. So a little bit of tape on all 4 corners, like that. And if it was a big fail for you, no worries. But even if it looks kind of just like cattywampus, like a weird watercolor background, this next part of the technique might save it. So just keep that in mind as you're working, that if you didn't get it the first time, maybe you still want to use this background, because the this next step, this next layer is going to kind of fill the rest of the design in for you, and it'll fill it in, and maybe it'll look like just kind of an abstract watercolor background with a little snowflake on top. So now I'm taking the next spiral star stencil. I'm going to line it up right on top, and this should line up right in between those white areas. So now instead of inking, it's the opposite. You're going to line it up so that the white areas are in between the new open areas that you want to go in and stencil. Is that making sense? Claire said hers was a fail, but it looks amazing. Hey, I'm glad that it turned out at least. Yeah, like I said, sometimes you do this technique and you're like, well, it's not necessarily what I wanted, but it gives me kind of a cool abstract look. And that's really what it's all about, just kind of playing around with the technique and seeing what you get, right? And sometimes you get something you don't love, and then you just start over and retry it again. And that's what's kind of fun about this, right? You learn a lot of new techniques, and you get to play with them in your next cards. All right. So I'm gonna go in here now, and let's tape this down on the sides just to make sure, again, that it's not gonna lift on me. And it doesn't really matter with the sides again, because we are going to end up cutting those down. All right. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of Astro paste in the clear skies color. Awesome. And we'll just go in here, take some out, and apply it right down at the top. And again, same technique that we were doing earlier. We'll apply a lot at the top here. Nice big globs of that Astro paste. And then we'll go in, and I'm going to use the scraper tool and scrape it down and smooth it out. Well, originally this card wasn't supposed to be part of the class. It was kind of just a bonus card, but I'm glad that we decided to do it today, because I think that if you tried this on your own and you kind of messed it up, you would feel a little bit more discouraged. But I hope that on video here, you can really tell, like, it's not the easiest technique to do, and it's not perfect every single time. And that's why it's important. I hope you're not discouraged by that. I hope you're ready to try it again in a little bit to keep kind of working at it, because it's a really fun technique to do. All right, so now I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna wipe this off. Wipe off all my tools. Everyone comments on my YouTube videos and they're like, I like that Simon prioritizes cleaning, because lots of us don't wanna clean, but it's good to know how to clean and also to keep your tools clean, right? Because I know some of you, I'm gonna call you out here. Some of your stencils look like a mess, which if that's how you craft, and that's totally okay. But I'm kind of a clean freak when it comes to my stencils. So especially when it comes to like this glitter stuff, I'm like, get this off of here. So I like to clean it off right away before anything dries, so that my stencils stay nice and clear. But hey, if you're one of the people who don't like to clean, that's totally okay too. You can let it dry in your stencil and kind of let it build up. I find that lots of people who like to do mixed media don't clean their tools as much, or they're really neat. Let me know in the comments. What kind of crafter are you? Are you like a clean crafter? Are you a messy crafter? Would you leave this paste on here without cleaning it? I want to know. I'm intrigued. It's always a fun question. Mindy said, I'm a total clean freak while crafting. Me too. I go in here and I clean every last bit. I'm like, I don't want any of this glitter over here. And the nice part about the Astro paste too is that once it dries, the glitter doesn't come off on you. So I'm totally fine once it's dry. But I like to just clean things off my stencils before it dries. Oh, I'm getting lots of different. Jen Shirka says it's okay to live on the wild side. Lots of messy, lots of clean. Some of you are a messy house and a clean crafter. I like that too. All right. With this background, I'm going to now set this off to the side and let it dry, and we're going to move on to the next card as well. Okay, let's see, where's the next area I can set this on? Okay, set it off to the corner of my desk here. Yes, you appreciate giving you time to clean. I'll give you a couple more, like maybe 30 more seconds to clean as well. Must clean stencils immediately, learned the hard way, yes. Definitely. Lots of you guys are saying you like to clean your tools, but then some people are saying they like to be messy, which, hey, that's okay too. Like Jen Shirka said, it's okay to live on the wild side sometimes. I pretend like I like to live on the wild side with all the pastes and stuff, but it all gets cleaned up right away. All right. There's something relaxing about watching me clean. Glad you're cleaning as you go. Hey, thank you. It's a little ASMR cleaning as we go. I like to clean my supplies before we move on to the next step, especially with those stencils, because otherwise you're going to have ink and paste kind of moving on to the next project. All right. So now let's move into the next card. This one is a fun birthday card. I love that we included the kind of balloon and this gift image. This gift image is really cool because this could be a birthday or Christmas, really with a gift for you. We kept it very generic. But then with this birthday one, I love it. People were like, oh, what are you gonna do with confetti with penguins, right? But it's really fun to sort of take this theme because I know a lot of people with winter birthdays, and this can be kind of a fun way to make them a birthday card that's not just candles and different things like that. It kind of is themed more towards their birthday, which I think is really great. So let me go in here. I'm gonna set this on the side so you guys can see. And let's go in and do my stamping. So with this, I'm going to do some heat embossing. So I'm gonna use my anti-static powder tool here, and I'm just going to use the powder tool all over the surface to make sure no embossing powder sticks where we don't want it to. And then I'm going to go in with some clear heat embossing powder. You could use white here as well because it's going to end up white in the end, but since we're doing it on white cardstock, I like to just use clear for no reason really, but if you want to use white, you totally can as well. Okay, and with this one, I'm going to go in with this stamp that you have in your kit. This is the confetti strip stamp. This was a kind of peel apart rubber stamp, and we gave you a section of it, which is awesome. So we were still able to include it in the kit rather than including a whole background along with a bunch of other goodies. But this makes it so that you can take this and stamp it all down your background. Now, you can use the strip that it's on as kind of a way to stamp it. All right, this is totally a great way to kind of lift it and move it around. I also wanted to let you know that you could use an acrylic block. In my Simon Hurley line, we have these large acrylic blocks that are designed for these sections of background stamps because we have a lot of different peel apart background stamps. And this is gonna give you more of kind of a sturdy handle. So if you don't have this during the class, use that piece of plastic to kind of lift it up and maneuver it. But if you have an acrylic block or you want to get one, this is a great acrylic block to use sections of your background stamps on. It's really nice and large, but it's not too big, so you can still really easily pick it up and stamp down with it. Okay. So let's go in here. I'm going to ink this up now with a little bit of clear sticky Versamark ink. I'm going to go in and ink up my whole background stamp. And then I'm going to stamp it right down at the bottom of my card to start off with. Oh, Marty says January birthday here. I appreciate that thinking. Yeah, it's always kind of fun to tailor it towards like a theme of the month that birthday's in. My friend just had a fall birthday, and I made more of like a fall themed card for it. So I thought it was really fun to kind of tailor it to the certain holidays or seasons that are going on. So now I'm gonna throw over a little bit of clear or white heat embossing powder, whichever one that you want, and tap off any of the excess. This allows me to see exactly where I am in my stamping, and that way I can kind of know where to stamp next. With just the watermark ink, you can't see it, but with this powder, you're able to see it a lot easier. Okay, next we're gonna go in again, going to ink this up, and then we're going to stamp it down again. Now I like to just rotate it the other direction. I think this is the other direction than what I used first. I'm gonna need to stand up and maybe look above my stamp for this one. So you're getting a top shot of my head there, but it fits really nicely in there if you kind of flip or rotate your stamp the other way, and then it'll kind of interlock almost back into the stamp, which is great. Then we'll go in, we'll throw over some clear heat embossing powder again so that you can see where that's stamped, and you can see it makes a really nice continuous background with that heat embossing. So it's a really great basic technique. Like, this is nothing new, that heat embossing and doing a fun resist. But I wanted to show it with the strip stamp, and I just wanted to show you kind of a fun way to create a birthday card here too. All right, so we'll flip it again. We'll stamp it down. We're going to do this one more time. Throw over a layer of that clear heat embossing powder, or white if you're using that. Great, and now we'll do one more stamping. Going to ink it up. And we'll stamp it right down onto your project. All right, we'll throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder and tap off the excess. So there is your finished background. Now you're going to go in and you're going to heat set this with with a heat tool. So go in and heat set this with a heat tool. I've already done this step just because nobody needs to hear my heat tool at full blast and full volume for a couple of minutes as I heat set this. So go in and heat set this right now, and then once it becomes clear and shiny, keep it moving and keep heating the rest of the background. That's going to create a nice resist here so we can apply ink over the top, and this is going to stay nice and white, and really bright white. Okay, so heat set it right now. Yep, I did use some anti-static powder tool right at the beginning, so that's really helpful to not get anywhere you don't want it to. So I'm gonna set that off to the side, and in true TV magic here, I do have a stepped out card example. Look, I almost stuck my elbow in another background. That would have been bad. That would have been bad, but I avoided catastrophe. Okay. So here is that card that I've already heat embossed. It's nice and clear and shiny in those areas. And now I'm gonna go in and I'm going to do some ink blending because my background is all heat set and resisted. All right, so for this background, I'm going to use a little bit of No Diving. I'm also going to use Midnight Snack. I'll use a little bit of Crown Me and Clear Skies. And this is going to create a beautiful kind of icy looking background that's nice and cold and has some fun colors going throughout it. Now for this background, I'm also going to use my ink blending tools instead of the blending brushes, but if you want to, you could use the blending brushes right now as well. Either way is going to work for this technique. And I'm just going to go in with one of my colors. I'll start off with this purple because we know I'm a purple lover here. And I'm gonna go in and blend this down. Now, whenever you're blending your colors down, you want to blend in like 2 to 3 areas across the card. So I'll blend at this corner, and then I'll also blend probably right down here, and just blend a little bit of that color in. It doesn't need to be perfect at first. It might look a little bit weird, but then once you start adding all the colors and kind of mixing and blending them, it's going to look perfect in the end. Okay. So then I'm going to go in with my next color. Here I'm going to use a little bit of No Diving. I'm gonna go in and grab my sponge for that color. And then we're going to go in and blend this right out. And I'll blend this right next to that Crown Me color, and you'll see it blends beautifully together. There's no harsh marks, there's no lines there, and you're gonna get such a great saturation of color, and they mix so wonderfully on the surface. All right, we'll add a little bit more right down here. And I love those two colors together. Okay. Then I'm going to go in with a little bit of Clear Skies ink. And we'll blend this out. So I'm gonna go up in this top corner. And I'm kind of following the sample. I liked where I put those colors in the first place. So I'm looking off to the side here at my instructions. You might want to do the same too and kind of blend it out like that. And I really like how all these colors blend together. They mix so well to create such beautiful blends. Okay. And then last but not least, we're gonna go in with a little bit of Midnight Snack. How do I come up with the names of my inks? I come up with the name of my ink with my mom, actually. We sit down and we listen to songs and we kind of think of funny jokes that we could include, and we have a ton of fun kind of brainstorming. Some of them come literally in dreams. The Ranger team can attest. Sometimes I send emails and I'm like 3 in the morning and it's like, whoa, I just came up with this name for the new product or this name for the ink pad. So a lot of it happens randomly. Sometimes when I'm driving, I'm like, that's a good name. So lots of random things. We just kind of think of anything that's funny because we want to really just like put a smile on people's faces with the ink pad names. And I like to keep them kind of playful and fun. Okay. So here is what that background looks like in the end. Like I said, they blend together beautifully, they create new colors in between, and they really mix so well to create this great background. I'm absolutely loving it right now. So to finish off this background, I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring in some paper towel and I'm going to go in and just wipe this off on the surface. This is going to leave that embossing really nice and bright white. So if there's any of the ink that's on top of the white embossing still, this will remove it really nicely, any of the excess ink, and it will be really nice and bright white. I love it. Okay. Yeah, Ranger says this is true. Yeah, they get random emails and they're like, can you change this name? And then I'll go in and like sometimes it'll come at midnight and I'll just send a random email and they'll get it the next day and be like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's move forward with that. So yeah, but it's just kind of fun to name. Naming is honestly the most fun part. It's like the last thing that we get to do. So once the whole product line is developed, then we get to come up with awesome names for the ink pads. I'm actually naming a couple of colors right now, and it is so much fun to do. All right, so let's go down to the work surface again. This is how that background is looking. The 4 colors that I used are Clear Skies, Crown Me, No Diving, and Midnight Snack. They are also in your instruction book here, right here. So all those blues and purples that you used in the instruction book, that's what you're gonna use here. All right. Look at Simon making Catherine's birthday card. I like that. Yes, this is the perfect birthday card. Okay. So I'm gonna go in and clean this off. And there we go. So is everyone caught up with this right now? How often do you re-ink your embossing pad? Not too often. I don't do that too often. And I use it a lot too. Okay. So once we're done with this background, I'm gonna set this off to the side now. Let's check on our other backgrounds. We'll see how it is. I'm gonna do the good old test by touching the color here to see how far we are. So with this, I'm actually going to heat set this. Actually, let's not heat set it yet. We have one more thing to do before we heat set, and then we'll go back in and see if we need to. Okay, so I'm going to go in with another piece of my Simon Hurley Stark White cardstock. This is the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. This is a card panel, no fold in it. Okay, and I'm going to go in and just sketch on a line, or you could do this totally freehand. What we're doing right now is creating this little hill that's on the card project. So if you want to, what I did on my card is I just kind of find where I want it to be, and I just make a little hill that goes up and down. Now, if you have a die to do this, that's great too. It's just a little tiny arch, just very slight, and that's about how I want it to look. I'm not good at fractions. This might be 1/4, a little bit more than 1/4 of your card. I didn't go to school, so I'm not good at fractions. In fact, math was my worst subject, so if you expect me to tell you anything about fractions or what percentage that I use, you're not getting that information out of me. All right. So all you need to do is go in and cut that hill out. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just a little hill is all you need for the card making project. This is what's going to be the grounding place for that penguin to be standing on. Do the inks come in mini ink pads? The inks do not come in mini ink pads currently, but great question. All right, I wish they do. Ask Ranger for that, but right now they don't. Okay, so for this, what I'm going to do is go in and use the Frostbite Astro paste. Yeah, Jennifer said, I'll do your math. Yeah, throw a little fraction in the chat. What do we think this hill is of what percentage of the cardstock? All right. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring in my paste tool set, my palette knife here. And I'm just going to take some of that Frostbite Astro paste and apply some of it to the top of the card. We'll scoop a little bit of this off here and we'll just bring it to the other side. Just working on my craft sheet here and spreading some of that down. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. You can kind of spread this down with your palette knife and you just want to kind of thin it out at the bottom there, or you could go in with your finger. And if you've taken one of my classes before, you know I'm always going to take that option, right? Because that's the easiest way. For me, it's easiest to control, but you can do whatever you feel like. If you want to use your palette knife and apply it down that way, you totally can. Now, just make sure not to do it super thick, otherwise it's going to take eons to dry. So I do kind of pat it down here and add some texture to it, but I'm keeping it pretty thin so that it's not going to take years to dry. But if you do apply it thicker, you might just have to wait until after the class in order to kind of finish this one off. But what you can do is you can kind of tap it with your finger like this, and that'll give you kind of some texture, and that texture will completely stay in the Astro paste once it's dry. And then I'll just thin it down on the bottom part here out to pretty much nothing and just kind of blend it into the white cardstock. All right. So there is how that's going to look. Again, not super thick. I kept it pretty thin. But if this takes a little bit longer to dry, then you might have to adhere it after class. But it's pretty easy to do. I'm going to set this off to the side to let this dry now. Let's see. How many of you finger painted and how many of you used your palette knife? Raise a hands in the comments here. I want to know which ones of you are scaredy cats over here and which ones of you dipped your finger right into it. It really is like who actually recently got their nails done and doesn't want to get it all over their nail polish. I can get behind that. I understand why you wouldn't want to ruin that. So if you need to use your palette knife, feel free as well. But I like using my finger just because you know kind of how much you're applying and you can really get kind of like the hold for how much like thickness is really there. Wow, I'm shocked. A lot of you guys are saying your finger. Great. You're stepping into your comfort zones here. I'm really proud of you. A lot of times when I teach in person, I yell at everyone. I'm like, use your fingers here. This is the real test. And a lot of people don't. So you guys are a good bunch. I'm proud of you guys. Lots of you guys finger painted. Good job, good job. And if you didn't use your finger paints, don't worry. I'm not shaming you. I still love you just the same. So don't feel ashamed about that. All right, let's flip back down to my work surface. I'm going to clean up my pastes here. Okay, and then I'll set this right off to the side for it to dry. All right. I've got a lot of things drying over here. I'm like trying to navigate. Okay, so now with this, I actually want to create another layer on this, but you can see as it's drying, it's gotten a lot clearer and you can basically see through it. But I'm gonna go in with a heat tool to heat set this. Now, if you do heat set your pastes, keep your heat tool moving across the surface. I love this heat tool from Ranger. A lot of people think that it's a hair dryer in my videos. It's not. It's still a heat tool. It gets just as hot as the other ones. But the thing is, it doesn't have as concentrated of heat. It's more dispersed. So that way it's not going to bubble your paste. And also you want to make sure to keep your heat tool moving so that you don't bubble up the paste. If you keep it kind of concentrated in one area, you're going to bubble it because you're kind of boiling that paste then. Allison said, can't promise I didn't want to wash my hands after. Lori said she used her finger and she just did her nails a couple of days ago. Well, Lori, I'm proud of you. Don't get mad at me if it ruins your polish. Maybe it just adds a little glitter tip to your nail polish though. Maybe it's like a little accent. That could be kind of fun. I want someone to do that. Someone put the Astro paste on your fingernail and then use like a sealer to kind of seal it in. That would be really cool. But they probably have glitter polishes like that, but I want to see it done with Astro paste. All right, too off topic. You guys are getting in my brain now. You're really hearing everything that's thinking here. So, does the Astro paste come out of clothes? Run to your wherever you can spray and wash it and clean that off immediately. Because I'm gonna tell you, it probably doesn't come off your clothes. I have a shirt that I got the tiniest little bit of glitter on from the Astro paste. And let me tell you, it sticks. It is stuck. So, while it's still wet, run. But once it dries, it does not come off. So do it right now. right now. Leave the screen. This is not important. Go clean your clothes. Okay, back down to my work surface. If you stain anything, clean it right away. I wouldn't recommend waiting. Okay, now let's go in and I'm going to go in with my second layer of the stencil. And we're going to, let's see, was this? This was the first layer, and then this is the second layer over here. Okay, and it should say Spiral Stars 2 on it. And we're going to go in and line this right up. You're going to overlap it now. It's clear, so I necessarily can't really see it. So I have to really get over top of my project like this. I apologize, you just saw the whole back of my head. But that's what you gotta do to line this up because it's clear. So it's really difficult to see where it is. But once you got it lined up, you can then tape this down with your mint tape. And you can do it on all sides. So is it great for t-shirt making? You know, I'm not sure. I would guess that after my recent comments, it probably is. I haven't used it on fabric purposefully. So don't take my word for it, but it could work on fabrics, I think. Because it does work like, it's very bendable, it's very flexible, so that even on the cardstock, when your card kind of bends, it's not gonna crack off, which is really nice. How do you know when it's dry? This is gonna be really bad, but if you touch it and it's not wet, it's dry. Also, on the back of the card, if your card is feeling a little cold, it's usually still wet. But I would always go in with like a heat tool and then touch like the corner. Touch like something you don't really care about and just see. All right. Okay, so for this layer, I'm gonna go in using a little bit of that Frostbite Astro paste again. And we're gonna go in using the paste tool set again, and here I'm just using the palette knife, okay? I'm gonna grab a little bit on the palette knife. Now, this is very important. I like that comment. Megan and Catherine are gonna show up tomorrow with Astro Paste glitter shirts. I hope so. A little DIY Astro Paste glitter shirt would be so fun. They're gonna be up all night working on that tonight. So you want to hold your stencil down wherever you're working, okay? Because if you just leave it like this and you apply your paste through, there's already a layer of Astro Paste underneath there. And that's making the stencil rise up a little bit more than usual, okay? So with this, when I apply it in certain areas, I'm holding that stencil down so that nothing goes through it. And I'm going to gently, very gently, apply this right through the stencil. Again, move my fingers, hold it down, and I'm going to gently apply it through. Don't force it through, don't press super hard, okay? You're going to gently apply it through. All right, and we're going to keep doing this, keep moving, keep gently applying it as you go down the card. Now, if you're not holding it down, you might have some paste seep through the stencil. It's mainly because there's already a layer of paste underneath. So like I said, the stencil's standing up a little bit more than it usually would. So that's why, but hold it down in each area and you should be good, okay? We're in our concentration phase here. This is taking a lot of focus out of me, but make sure that you take your time and hold down your stencil in those areas. Okay, now once you've done that, we're going to put any of the paste back into the jar and put your jar closed. Okay, once the paste dries on paper, will it come off on your hands? No, it will not. That's one of the best parts about Astro Paste. Once the glitter dries, it stays on the card. This was very important to me when I developed the Astro Paste. And you can even see in my book, my quote, I love glitter so much as long as it stays on the card. Because this is probably not good to say if you have a glitter paste line, but I hate glitter, okay? But when glitter is on the card and it's staying there, I love glitter. Like, it's beautiful. It really is. But it's a menace to society if it is loose. So I love that once these pastes are dry and you rub your fingers all over it, nothing comes off, okay? That's really important to me when it came to these colors. And so nothing is gonna come off on your projects once they're completely dry. I can't promise anything when it's wet like this, but once it's dry, nothing is moving, which is awesome. Okay. Now I'm gonna set this off to the side and let it dry. This one's a little bit thicker than the last one just because there was a little bit more of a raised surface, but once this dries, it should be completely clear and you will see the ink underneath it again. All right, I'm gonna set that off to the side. Now we're gonna clean our stencil one more time, and I think we're done with paste here. I'm pretty sure we're done with paste. So once you're done cleaning the stencil, this is gonna be your last time cleaning for the day. Your last chores. So you're just gonna go in here, spray that down, and wipe it off. And now your chore list is complete. Once you've cleaned this, you're all done. All right. So let's move on into the next step, which I think is going to be stamping all of the images. Yep, I did all the layers of paste. I'm like reading the instructions that I wrote for myself because I'm like, okay, we did the second layer of frostbite paste. Now let's do the stamping, okay? So there is one more card base, or card panel. There should be another piece of cardstock in your kit. And it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Yeah, it's a menace to society. The glitter is a menace to society. Cover your ears, Jen Shirkus. Yeah, I can't stand glitter. But inside the paste, it's beautiful. Okay, so let's go in here and do our stamping now. I'm gonna use these adorable little penguins. I saw so many comments. Everyone's loving these penguins. I love them. They are so cute. I love all the different styles. This one looks so fun in his little outfit. He's kind of dancing, showing it off. And we're going to go in here and stamp all these down. So grab your penguin, put it onto the acrylic block, and we'll do our stamping. Now I'm going to use a little bit of VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink because I'm going to clear heat emboss these, but you can use any sort of black permanent ink that you want to as well to stamp all the images down. All right, so ink them up. Gina, she said, I'll be following my instructions tomorrow too. Yep. I wrote myself some little instructions here too. I'm like, because I had to go completely out of order. So I'm a little out of whack, but I was like, no, I gotta do it out of order so that everything is nice and dry when we move on to the next step. So we're really going cattywampus here, but I was like, I gotta remember what I'm doing here. Okay. So now when I'm coming to stamp these, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to stamp them kind of far apart, like in the four corners. Mainly because we're going to do some die cutting and I want to do it all in one pass. I'm a lazy crafter, if I'm going to be completely honest. And when I do my die cutting, you want to stamp far enough apart so that you don't have to do it a million times. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's why it's a little far apart. But it's going to be really helpful in the long run when we're doing our die cutting. All right, and then one more over here. We're gonna do this little guy with the balloon. He's a cutie. They're all so adorable. What should we name them? Anyone have an idea? Leave some names in the chat. What should we name these little penguins? That's the question of the day. All right. All right. So now let's go in, and I'm going to throw over some clear heat embossing powder. So you'll just throw over clear heat embossing powder like we did earlier, and once again, through the magic of TV, we have one that's already heat embossed, okay? The heat embossing isn't super important if you're not using a pigment ink, but because I'm using a pigment ink, I went in and heat embossed it. Oh, I love all the names in the comments. These are all so fun. Fred, Pete, Sparkles. I like Sparkles. This is definitely Sparkles right here. Sylvester, that's so cute. Okay, I'm getting distracted, but please everyone enjoy those names in the comments. So, oh, one has to be Simon. I think I claim this guy. He's a cutie. But so I also did the heat embossing because the clear heat embossing powder is going to help any of your watercolor stay inside the lines. So if you're struggling with watercolor and it kind of seeps outside of the lines, I recommend clear heat embossing. It's going to really help you stay inside the lines because all of those clear kind of channels that are raised are going to keep the ink inside, okay? That's why I like to clear heat emboss as well. It's little bumpers for me, it's little training wheels, but if you want to skip that step because you're more advanced, totally do so. And like you also don't need it if you used a permanent ink too. I'm going to bring in these little penguin guys so you guys can know how to color them in. So when it comes to coloring these guys, I did them all just slightly different. But let me show you how I did them. So I'm gonna go in with some of my ink pads and just swipe them down onto my craft sheet. Gonna use a little bit of rosy cheeks. We're using all of the colors, or not all, but most of the colors that we used that were on that sheet there. So I used a little bit of rosy cheeks, a little bit of guppy, a little bit of crown me. Then we'll go in using a little bit of clear skies, a little bit of no diving, and lastly, we'll go in using a little bit of woof. How about Simon, Cody, Laura, and Catherine? I like that. All right, let's go in and spray this down with a little bit of water. And then we're going to go in and do our paintbrush. Okay. Fred, that's a cute name. I like Fred for him. Okay, so I'm going in with a little bit of water on my paintbrush here, and I'm just going to go in and color. Now, with a lot of these penguins, I'm gonna leave their bellies white. With this one here, because there's so much orange on this card, I wanted to make this penguin a little different. And I'm gonna go in and add a little bit of water down first. I always add a layer of water down first, no matter what kind of cardstock I'm using. That's gonna get the cardstock ready to take any color, and then you can go in with a little bit of color and start doing your blending. If you don't do the water first, sometimes I find that it has a hard time blending and it soaks right in, and you might get kind of harsh lines because of that. So if you're struggling with your blending, try adding the water down. That's always been super helpful for me. And then I'll just use a little bit of water to blend that out into the white cardstock. So I'm just making his little tummy that great orange color. I think it's so cute. And I'm just going to blend that out into the white. Cute. What kind of penguin is that? Anyone know? Emperor penguin, maybe? What's the orange one? Whatever it is, that's the kind of penguin that one is. And then for the other ones, I'm gonna leave their little tummies white. If you want to, another thing you could do is go in just using a little bit of gray. In fact, wait, I almost just broke my own rule. I'm gonna go in first with a little bit of water. Just a wash of water. That's super helpful. And then, after my wash of water, then I'll go in with a little bit of gray. You can always add a little gray to his stomach too. This is a really light gray color. It's called Woof. And that's just going to give a little bit of shading and dimension to it. Because sometimes like white objects actually have a little bit of shadow to them. So this gives that a little bit of shading if you want to. You don't have to. I'm gonna leave the other two white on their stomachs, but do whatever you want to. Oh, emperor penguins do have the orange. Okay, great. Great, I know something. All right. I know my penguin terms, I guess. Which I don't know if it's impressive or concerning. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in and do the rest of my watercoloring. So I'm just going to color these guys in using all the same colors that we've been using. Now, the reason why I'm not introducing any new colors here is because I want them to match the cards completely. So just bringing in all of your past colors that you've used is going to just help kind of keep it cohesive and make it look like it belongs on your card. And then to do a little bit of shading, I'll go in with a darker version of that color. So here I'm using No Diving on top of that Crown Me color, and that's gonna give you a darker blue color. So there's that little penguin there. And what I love so much about these little guys too, is that the black is all colored for you because it's stamped, which is one of my favorite things because like I said, I don't know how many times I can repeat it, I'm the laziest crafter around, and having that already done for you makes coloring really a breeze. You just kind of get to add colors to their scarves and their accessories, which is really fun. Kind of get to create their own little wardrobe here. And how adorable is that? Okay, so here I'm adding a little bit of Crown Me down. I'll maybe add a little bit of blue onto his scarf as well to one side. Then I'm going to add little pink earmuffs. I think that could be cute. I'm basically just coloring it like I did on the examples too. So if you want to, you can always look back at the examples to see exactly what I did. Gonna go in here on this little gift, paint it that clear skies blue color. We'll paint in the little bow too. And then I'll add a little bit of No Diving ink on the sides to add a little bit of shading and dimension to the gift. Oh, I like that. I like the jokes we're telling. What's a penguin's favorite type of lettuce? Iceberg. That's funny. I like that. It's a little dad joke. I like it. Okay, that's good. All right, now for this last one, I'm gonna go in with my scarf Color that in using a little purple. I like that. Keep telling jokes, guys. All right. And then I'm going to go in. You can use a little bit less water and that same color, and that's going to give you a darker version of that color. What matte is Simon using? Okay, so I'm going to tell you such a secret, okay? I have been lying to you, just slightly. It's just a slight lie. But the lie is because I'm protecting you guys, okay? I tell you that I'm using a craft sheet, but I'm not. This is actually a laminate desktop. I would not recommend working on it. But I do it for the video because there's no glare and it also looks kind of nice. It gives my aesthetic with that wood kind of vibe, but it's not a real craft mat. But I say I'm doing it on my craft mat so that you don't work on your table because you need a craft mat. Because this thing is stained galore. It's so stained, but I do it for my videos. So that's the lie. Little white lies, I guess. All right. And then I'm gonna go in here. Oh, for this balloon, we're gonna stamp that down. And then for the cheeks, I just add a little bit of rosy cheeks, and I'm just going to dot a little bit of blush underneath all of the cheeks. Cute. So rosy cheeks really is the perfect color for the little cute rosy cheeks. How fun is that? I love it. So there we go. If you colored that balloon in, that's totally fine as well. But I am going to stamp that in with the stamp. Rebecca, it is technically my craft mat, so I'm not really lying, I guess. But I lie for your own good, guys. All right, I'm going to clean all of that off. And then I'm going to go in and stamp this down. Now there's a little solid balloon stamp inside of the kit. I'm going to pull out that little solid balloon. Going to put it on my acrylic block. And I'm gonna just stamp that little guy in blue. So here I'm using that no diving ink. And I'm going to ink it up. And then we'll stamp it right down onto that balloon. No, yeah, this is truly Craft Confessions, 100%. You don't get this anywhere else. And look at that. And the really fun part about that balloon stamp is it has a little highlight in it too. So it's really adorable. It colors it in so great, and it gives you that little highlight as well. How fun are these? Have we named them yet? We did. We had some fun naming them. I heard you named one Fred though, so we'll keep one of its names Fred, because that's fun. All right. Okay. So now I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna just heat set these guys a little bit, just because they're still a little bit wet from watercoloring them, so I want to heat set them to help them dry along so we can continue our process here. We're almost done. We're going to cut these out. We're in the home stretch here. We're gonna cut these out and then we're going to adhere all of our cards together. And it looks like we're doing pretty good on time as well, which is great. It's always the scariest part, is if we're gonna make it in time. And I decided to do the bonus card last minute here. I'm glad I did, because now you guys get a little bit more info too along with the class, but I don't think we're gonna go overtime, which is great. So once those are all colored in, you can always take some time afterwards too if you want to, and really kind of relax and do some coloring too. I did it pretty quickly just because you don't need to see every single little detail, but I'm glad I was able to give you a couple little watercolor tips, like adding water beforehand to make sure the inks kind of blend and different things like that. Rebecca says, is no diving a darker shade of clear skies? Kind of. It's not the same exact tone of ink, but it is a darker blue and you could really use it to blend over top, which is nice. All right, now I'm gonna go in and grab all of these cute little guys. The coordinating die set. Now this is a coordinating die set from Spellbinders. Like I said, I'm so glad that Ranger and Spellbinders are able to work together and collaborate like this. Spellbinders creates all of my die sets, and Ranger creates all of my stamp sets. So for them to collaborate, it takes a little bit of effort to kind of align everyone's schedules and make it all work. But I'm really glad that they do that so that we can have coordinating dies in our sets. And so all you need to do then is just go in, grab some mint tape, of course. I love me some mint tape, especially for die cutting, because sometimes with tapes, I find that after they go through the die cutting machine, they kind of will rip your cardstock a little bit because of all the pressure that adhered down. But I find that with mint tape, I don't have that issue. So huge shout out to scrapbook.com again for making such an awesome tape. I love it for die cutting. So I'm just going to line all these up. There's 4 large dies in that die set to cut out all of the images, and then there's also sentiment dies, which you guys should have done the sentiment for your homework. It was included in that homework. If you didn't do it, you can always do it right after the class, but we do have most of the sentiments prepared. We have 1 to do together, but all of the rest of the sentiments are done. So just line these guys up really easily and use some mint tape. All right. Mindy says, I'm jealous he doesn't need readers to line the dies up. I mean, I hope I'm doing a good job. I can't, usually I like look directly over my work surface. I can't see, and I don't want you guys to see my huge head again. So I'm just, you know, taping these down with a hope and a prayer that they're lined up. And if they're a little off, now you guys know why. I can't actually really see over top. So I hope they're pretty lined up. I did a decent job. Okay. So once those are all lined, we're going to grab out our die cutting machine. Here. Let me grab it. And we're going to place this right inside of here. Put that plate down. And we're going to run it right through our die cutting machine. We'll really awkwardly stare at each other as we run it right through. I can't even keep a straight face as I do this. Now the question is, I'm part of the penguin family, of course. I'm one of them. But the question is, have I been wearing this the whole time, or did I just put it on? That's the real question here. So now I'm going to flip right down to my desk. We've got all these penguins cut out here. Going to pop all of these right out of the surface. And what I love so much about these is it cuts out so well along those lines, leaves a little bit of a white border. You can see with that balloon, it cuts out beautifully. And all of these are really easily cut up. It looks like we did a pretty good job at lining it up, right? Awesome. How do you hide it when you get the die not lined up and it's shorter on one side? You can always go in and trim a little bit off, but I find that it's not it doesn't look too bad if you get it just a little bit misaligned. I'm glad everyone likes the penguin hat. I was like, last minute I pulled that out. I was like, I think I gotta wear this for today. There's penguins everywhere. I gotta be one of them while I do my die cutting, of course. Okay, so now let's start putting things together here on our cards. So let's start off with this one. This one's the easiest. So this is our card. Now I am going to cut this down a little bit. I have in my notes what size to trim it down to, and it should say in your instructions as well. I am going to trim this one down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I love that you guys love that hat. All right, so we'll do 3 3/4, and then we'll do 5 inches. Nice and easy. And this is going to give us a nice white border all the way around our card project. So that's going to give us a really great matted layer. Now there's one more step to do here, and this I like to just go in using a little bit of Crown Me ink, and I'm going to go in and just ink blend. Now make sure that your paste is dry. This should be long dry because we did it at the beginning of class, and I'm just going to go in with my domed foam blending tool, and I'm going to do our blending. Now, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you might want to go in with a brush, a blending brush on the edge, just because the foam and the glitter kind of will rip apart each other. I'm going to keep going in with this blending tool because it's what I have right now, but I don't want to ruin your foams, so if you're working at home, I would recommend, if you're going to do this, because that glitter paste is kind of gritty once it's dry, you might want to use a blending brush here. Okay, and just blend all the way across the surface. Now, I love to blend on the edges here. It gives you a nice little kind of defining border to it, and it makes it look really great against your white cardstock, which we're going to add it on. Bev said, I was working on something else and listening to Simon, and I looked up and I saw the hat. That's awesome. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and just add some tape runner down to adhere this right down to our card. Really easily, and we'll add this right down front and center onto our top folding card base. Super easy to do, and it gives us a nice white border all the way around. I love that, and that purple edge really makes it stand out against the white card base. All right. Then to adhere this together, I'm actually going to go in and create a sentiment because we didn't do this during the homework. It's this adorable little guy on this card, and I love him so much, but I'm going to do one sentiment with you guys because I want to show you how to create this banner, okay? So let me go in and grab a sheet of black cardstock. Now you should have already stamped and die cut your sentiments on your piece of black cardstock, and there's a little bit left over, okay? I'm gonna use the other kind of section of the black cardstock to do my stamping for this sentiment. All right, this looks good. Let's do this side. So I'm gonna go in with a little bit of anti-static powder tool because we're gonna do some heat embossing with white embossing powder on our black cardstock. So I've prepped it with the anti-static powder tool. Now I'm going to use some Versamark ink, and I'm going to use the sentiment that says sending warm hugs. Pull that out. I'm going to place this onto an acrylic block, and then we will ink it up with our Versamark clear sticky ink. We're going to stamp it right down onto the piece of black cardstock. That looks great. I stamped it just a little bit up from the bottom there, like that. And then we're going to use a little bit of white heat embossing powder to heat emboss this. And this white is going to stand out really great against the black cardstock. All right, sprinkle that over top and tap off the excess. I also find that lightly blowing on it is going to get rid of any of the excess powder and give you a really crisp embossed effect. And then I'll go in and heat set this until it's nice and bright white. All right, that is great. Looks awesome, and it really stands out great against the black cardstock. Then I'm going to just kind of wipe off any of the excess powder that's on there, and that makes your cardstock nice and dark black again. And then I'm going to go in and create the banner. To do this, I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer again, and I'm just going to leave a little bit of extra room at the top here as I cut this out. So you can see we're leaving quite a bit of extra space in here, and then I'll trim this down. You can see more space at the top than there is at the bottom. That's what you want when you create this banner, because we're giving room for the penguin to stand at the top of the sentiment. Then I'm gonna go in and trim off on either side. Now to line this up, I'm putting the edge of that sentiment against the edge of this plastic guide. That's how I know how it's gonna be lined up. And I'm going to do that on either side of the sentiment to make sure it's nice and even. All right, looks good. So that's the first part of our banner. That's the main section with the sentiment. Now we're gonna go in and we're just going to trim down little pieces that we can use as our banner. These are about 3/4 inches, and we're just trimming them down in our trimmer here, all right? So once you've done that, you should then have your banner, your main piece, and then you should have two little pieces that are even size that are going to be the sides of the banner. You're going to line them both up together so that these two become one, line them up here, and then grab your scissors, and I'm going to go in and trim right into the center, one slit down the center, and then you're going to go in from either side, either corner, and you're going to trim that right into the center there to meet up. So again, trim from the other corner, right into the center where it meets up. Perfect. That looks great. Clean it up a little bit if you need to, and then you have two banner sides, all right? Then, my voice is getting a little hoarse from talking so much, but then I'm going to go on either side and add a little bit of liquid glue or tape runner. Then I'm going to go in And I'm going to adhere this down, placing it down onto the banner to line it up. And you'll just want it so that it's a little bit below the banner there. So it looks something like that. You line it up on the other side and do the exact same thing. Lining it up a little bit below the banner and then adding it down. And it should look something like this. So there we have our DIY banner. There was no dye needed, and that's going to create a really great point for your penguin to sit on. I'm going to need a little bit of water here for a second. All right. So there we go. There is our banner. Now let's put the card together. Okay, this is what it needs to look like in the end. All we're going to do is grab a little bit of foam tape, and you're going to, well, first you're actually going to adhere this down using just a little bit of liquid glue or tape runner down at the bottom. And you're going to make him stand right onto that banner piece, like that. So 2 becomes 1 then. That's why we left that little bit of area for him to stand on. And then we're going to go in with our foam tape. You can use any foam tape here. And we're just going to go right in using some from Altenew and add some right down onto the banner, add some onto the penguin, and we'll cut 2 little pieces for the edges of the banners too. All right, so add some adhesive, and then we'll peel all these off and adhere it front and center onto your card project. I love this guy. He's so fun. Okay. And then we'll adhere it down. That looks great. How fun is that? I love the sparkly background mixed with the ink. One of the most basic ways to use the stencil, but it looks really awesome that we were able to add the Astro paste there that really makes it shine and kind of stand out on your card project. It's absolutely adorable. I think we named this little guy Sparkles. He's looking mighty fabulous there on the front of this card. And I think it's just such a great winter card to kind of check in on a friend and send them a fun little hello card. All right. Then let's move on to adhering this next card together. This one's a little bit more involved. Now, this one still needs to dry just a little bit. Actually, let's save that one for a couple more minutes later because I'm gonna let it dry a little bit more. We might need to heat set it a little bit at the end, but we'll adhere it together at the end. Okay. So then I'm going to go in and let's see, I think this one is nice and dry. I'm gonna go in and trim this guy down. So we're going to trim just a little bit off of each end. I'm going to trim it right down to, let's see, what's the exact measurement? I don't want to tell you guys the wrong one. You're going to trim it down to 3.5 by 5.5 inches. So 3.5 by 5.5. So trim it down on either side, and that's going to give you a nice white border on either side of your card project. Right? So go in here, use a little bit of your tape runner. And whenever you're adhering something that you want from top to bottom with a little bit on each edge of a border, you're gonna go in and line it up at the top edge first, and then you're going to place it down and it should line up everywhere else. That's how you wanna do it. You don't wanna line it up starting from the bottom because you can't trim it off. That way, if there's any extra here, you can always trim it off, but you can't trim it at the fold. So really great, I absolutely love it. Regina said she's going to try this background in red. It's so pretty. I agree. This would be really fun in red. It might look like poinsettias. So gorgeous. Thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer says these colors are so yummy. I agree. They're so bright, and I love the sparkles that are in here as well. So gorgeous. Okay. So for this card, we're keeping it super simple. We're going to use the sentiment that says a gift just for you. I'm going to just adhere this sentiment straight down because it's nice and small, and I don't want to futz with foam tape for this one. But if you want to pop this up on foam tape, you totally can. I'm going to adhere that right down onto the card, and then we'll pop this guy on some foam tape as well. Let's see, where did I put that? That's the real question. When you're like so in, oh, here it is. When you've got such a messy desk, you just start losing things at the end. All right. We'll add a little bit of foam tape down, and then I'm going to peel those off and add it right above that sentiment. Adorable. How fun is that? So, so cute. I love it. Should we add another little tip here? I want to tell you guys something else, okay? Something that I didn't include in the instructions, but I hope it's okay to share it. This is that Clear Skies Astro paste. And because that gift is that blue color, there's a couple ways you could do this. Now, whenever I'm going in on die cuts, I like to just use my finger. I use literally the tiniest amount, and you can just go in and tap it on, okay? If you're using your finger, just be careful you don't get it all over the image. Again, a little bit goes a really long way here, and I'm just going to tap a little bit on. The reason I like using my finger is because you're just applying the tiniest amount, and it's not concentrated, but you still get all of that glitter, which is super fun. Now you could also go in if you want more of a concentrated color, or you want to stay inside the lines a little bit easier. You can go with a paintbrush, dip this in, and color it on there. Just be sure to wash your paintbrush out after you're done with that. You don't want to ruin your paintbrush. So the Astro paste will ruin your brush if you get it stuck in there. So like I said, I'm lazy. That's why I like to use my finger to do things, because it's easier to clean off. But a really awesome way to add a little bit of sparkle there. And then once that's completely dry, no glitter is coming off. And because we tapped it so thin, it's going to take you maybe a minute to dry. But such a fun way to add it onto the card and give some sparkle to part of your image too. And because it's so thin, it's not covering up the lines of the image. If you put it on super thick, it would cover up the lines. But because we just tapped the slightest bit on, it just adds a little bit of glitter. Awesome. Jennifer says she uses the paste in her video. I can't wait to see Jennifer's video kind of mixing everything up and using all these supplies. All right. So then we're going to finish off the last two cards. Here, we're going to trim this confetti card down. We're going to trim it to, let's see, trim it to 3 3/4 by 5.5. All right, so just trim a little bit off of the edges. And again, this one's a pretty similar design in which it's going to have a white border on either side. So we'll go in, use a little bit of tape runner. And then again, move it to the top, line it up here with a little bit of a white border on either side. That's gonna line up all the way down and be really easy to adhere onto your project. Super easy to line things up if you start at the top like that. All right. Then I'm gonna go in with this little guy. How cute. I love this guy with the balloon. And I'm gonna go in with my foam tape again, cut off a couple little pieces of it. To adhere right down. And this one needs to be just slightly smaller for that balloon. All right. So we'll peel this off. Yay, I'm so glad you guys are liking this class, that you're liking all of the different tips. Someone said they like my calm voice. Hopefully I'm not putting you guys to sleep over here. All right. And then we're going to adhere this right down. If I put anyone to sleep, I think the penguin hat woke them up earlier. And we'll adhere this right down front and center onto our card. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm just going to adhere this straight down to the card. This is the sentiment that we've already die cut out. And it says happy birthday. And again, perfect for any birthdays that are kind of in the winter. I think this is going to be so fun for that. So I'll adhere that down. And there we have that awesome card. I love it. And again, if you want to, go back into your jar, touch a little to your finger or a paintbrush, and dot it on there. And on that balloon now, there's just a little bit of sparkle. I love it. I love it, and it's way better than gluing glitter onto there, because this is gonna stay put completely because it's submerged in that, in the base, that clear base there, whereas the glitter sometimes falls off if you just have it on adhesive. I love it. How fun is that? All right. I love the blending on this one. I love that resist using the confetti stamp. I think you guys are gonna have a ton of fun with that confetti stamp. After this class is all over, the possibilities for that one are really endless and super fun. And then, of course, this little penguin. This one with the balloon might be one of my faves. He's such a cutie. Okay. Now next we're going to put together this card. This one's a little bit more involved. Let's go in and first just heat set this now till it's completely dry. It's almost there. You can see it's gotten a lot clearer, but I can still feel that it's a little bit cold on the bottom of my card, and I can still see some areas that are a little bit whiter. So I'm just gonna go in here and heat set this a little bit to help it dry. Even if it's not completely dry, I'm still gonna show you guys how to put it together. It might just be a little bit wet as I do so. And if that's the case, if yours is still completely wet, just come back to this video to see how it's adhered, or go into the booklet to see how it's adhered if you want to wait until after class for yours to completely dry, which I totally understand. You don't want to ruin all the hard work that you put into this background. So I don't know, mine's pretty much almost dry. Not completely dry as you can see in some of these areas, but I'll just be a little bit careful as I do it. So to adhere this down, we're going to start off with the base, and I'm just going to adhere the adhesive down to my card base. That way I'm not flipping this background over. Again, I'll adhere it starting in the top right corner, move over to the top left, and then I'll adhere this down. I'm not gonna use my paper trimmer right now to trim this out because this isn't completely dry and I don't wanna put it in there, but I would trim this edge off. That way it's completely finished. Once that's done, we've got that on there, then you can go in with this piece. This one isn't completely dry either, but we're gonna make do with what we have, and I'm gonna show you how to put it together using a little bit of foam tape. So grab some foam tape pieces. Again, you don't need to follow along with this last one because yours might still be wet, but I just wanna show you how to put it together. All right, so I'm gonna go in here and I'm going to rip these pieces off and add a little bit of foam tape to the back of my little hill. I'll answer questions about cleaning stencils. Remind me at the end. I'll answer that in just a minute, because I got a little tool to show you. All right, we'll adhere that down. And then let's adhere that little penguin on top. He's such a little cutie. We'll adhere this little guy right down onto the hill. And then, last but not least, we will adhere that "Snow Glad We're Friends" sentiment right down onto the card underneath that little snow hill. Perfect. How cute is that? I love it so much. This one might be my favorite. Don't do it right now if your stuff is still wet, but that background is gorgeous. I love the texture that we got in the background with that glittery snowflakes and all of that really fun ink blending using our ink pads to create that kind of sunset look. Then using that white cardstock to just apply the little frostbite there to get kind of a snow hill look. I just love how this one came together. It is so adorable with all of those amazing, intense, vibrant colors. I think it turned out beautifully. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about cleaning your stencils. I've seen a couple of questions throughout the class about cleaning your stencils, how to make sure that all of your Astro paste comes off. Let me show you. So the first thing I recommend, again, like I showed you at the very beginning, is this tin right here, especially if you're using a bunch of stencils at once. Put all of your stencils into here as you're working. That way you don't have to worry about cleaning every single one off individually, and then you can kind of wipe the glitter off a little bit later. There's a lot of glitter in here already from cleaning off the first time because it's really helpful to have this container because it leaves all of the glitter kind of sitting in the water there and nice and contained. Another thing that I recommend, especially I recommend this if your paste is already stuck onto the stencil. This one is called the Ranger Rub It Scrub It tool. Try spraying on a little bit of rubbing alcohol and then going in here with this Rub It Scrub It tool and scrubbing on your surface. This has a little bit of kind of a rough surface, like almost like a spongy rough texture on here. This is going to clean off your stencil without ruining your stencil and also get rid of some of those little bits and bobs. Sometimes it's hard to get off all of the glitter. You can see there's still a little tiny bit of glitter on my stencil here because I didn't really take too much time to do it today just because we were on live. But like I said, you want to clean it before it's dried off. Otherwise, this is kind of like a last resort. But you can get pretty much all the glitter off before it dries. That's when you want to clean your stencils off. Otherwise, it kind of sits on that surface a little bit more. Another thing that I want to point out, you guys do have a coupon code inside of your kit from Granger. I believe it's probably still active. It's inside of here on the back of that little sticker there, or that little pamphlet there. And you can go get your Astro pastes. Now, one thing I did want to tell you is inside of the class kit, because we wanted to include 2 colors and we wanted to have all the other stuff in here, we had to make them just a little bit smaller. These are 1 fluid ounce jars, but if you're really into the Astro paste, just know that the price online for a full Astro paste is for 2 fluid ounces. So you're getting double the paste inside of here for whatever price you are paying for them. So in case you want to get the same 2 Astro pastes that you had inside your kit, if you're running out, you totally can. But just know that they're going to be in bigger jars. Also, same with all the other colors. There's lots of colors of the Astro pastes here. There's 9 colors right now so far. So you can always, if you really enjoyed these 2 colors, you can always pick up the rest of the colors in the collection as well. They're all absolutely beautifully, and that sparkle is just gorgeous on there. I love it so much. It's one of my favorite products we've come out with. So beautiful to have all that glitter, but again, have it contained so that nothing comes off in your hands once it's completely dry. All right, I think that's all that I wanted to cover. I know there was a couple of questions I was going to come back to. I think that's pretty much it. Cleaning those stencils off and then talking about the Astro paste sizes. But here are all the cards that we created during today's live. I hope you guys really enjoyed creating these cards along with me. Again, if it was a little bit too fast at some areas, definitely go back to the beginning and restart, or go back to that section. This is going to be available for you guys forever, so you can always come back to these classes and keep watching. So if you were just eating snacks tonight, which is something that I completely support, and just kind of relaxing as you watched it, definitely come back at a different time and kind of retake the class and soak in all the knowledge. Or if you want to go back to a certain part, maybe you messed up this watercolor background and you want to try it again, definitely go back and keep rewatching. Yes, I'll post a photo of the color swatches of the Astro paste. I definitely will do that. That was a great suggestion. I will post that as well as all of the cards in the group, and I literally cannot wait to see all of your projects. I know there's little folders over there showing all of your projects when you're done, so feel free to flood that with your cards from this class, my little folder. I can't wait to see all of the amazing cards and projects that you are making with the class. Gina K says she feels seen. She's eating snacks and enjoying the watch. Gina, that's how I do it too. I pull out all the snacks, maybe pull up my laptop and watch all these classes all day. That's what I'll be doing tomorrow. So it'll be tons of fun. I want to have a huge thank you to Catherine for inviting me back to teach a class here. I am always so excited to teach to this amazing group of all of you guys. You are so wonderful. Catherine has truly cultivated such an amazing community. You're all so kind during today's class. Hilarious. I loved all the penguin jokes. And it's been so much fun to sit here, teach this class with you guys, and kind of hang out for the last 2 hours. So thank you for joining me, giving me your time tonight, giving me your evening, and hanging out together as we crafted. It has been so much fun, and now I think you guys are going to join Catherine in a little bit for the wrap-up of the event tonight, and then you've got more days full of classes very soon, which is going to be so much fun. I can't wait for it. All right, thank you everyone. I will see you soon in another card making and